I joined the PWC, my first ever Wi-Fi draft league, and my competition is stacked with top players in the draft. If I want to win, I have to draft a really good team. But before we can draft our normal Pokemon, we have to draft our Terra Captain. Yeah, that's right. Immediately we need to get a Terra Captain. You see, the rule of the PWC is that your round 1 pick is a Terra Captain worth 6 points or less. And that Pokemon has to come to every week. I was 15, meaning the amazing Terra Captains like Farigiraf and Hisuian Electro, they were gone really quick. I consider getting Avalugg or Magneton. Magneton especially being a pretty good Terra Captain normally in like lower tier draft leagues. But as good as they are, I don't really want them because I don't think they can exactly come every week too comfortably, especially Magneton. I settled on Magmortar as a result because I think Magmortar can definitely come every week to some degree. It's not amazing normally, but as a Terra Captain, Magmortar could be pretty fun as I can expand its already very expansive move pool that consists of a lot of coverage, and Magmortar can become a versatile offensive threat and even has support options. I actually haven't checked yet, but Magmortar in Run and Bun gets slack off. I wonder if it gets slack off normally. It's also an amazing user of the Assault Bed, which is my favorite item, so extra points there. As 15th pick, I was 2nd pick in round 2. My plan was that if Dragapult, the number 1 Pokemon, gets sniped, I would take Iron Valiant, but I would do so begrudgingly, because I don't like Iron Valiant in the draft. I think it is an inconsistent, very strong, but very inconsistent Pokemon. Thankfully, Fire Master was asleep, and I was able to snag Dragapult as a result. As of recently, I've been very Dragapult brained, be it in Run and Bun or VGC carrying me to victory, as it hopefully will in this league. What I value in Dragapult is its typing, speed, and consistency, and it's known as best draft league Pokemon for a reason. The myriad of coverage, the status moves, it's a very flexible Pokemon, and I can definitely work with its stats and everything. Dragapult is an amazing Pokemon, and to pair with Dragapult, I was initially thinking of grabbing Clefable to start working on that Dragon Steel Fairy Core, but instead I chose Ogerpon Wellspring as my next pick. Ogerpon is a contender for my favorite draft Pokemon, but I haven't got to use the Wellspring Mask. It was weird as it had a lot of the moves I valued, but it's not usually using them super often due to its sweep potential. That being said, it gets what I want and can do what I needed to do, and I am excited to see if Wellspring can match up with the other forms that made me love Ogerpon so much. I was leaning towards Glimmora next as it was available and felt cool alongside Dragapult as a spin blocker. I decided to ask Fierce Flamethrower what he thought about Glimmora, but before I even could really say anything, he was like, Iron Hands. Now, I am down to draft a 13-point Iron Hands as my next pick. I have barely seen it in draft, and I can definitely work with this extremely very good Pokemon. Also, it's very fun to make EV spreads for. Look at that. With Iron Hands, though, I am fairly weak to Fairy, so I should probably get a Fairy Resist. So I chose to get a Poison type next. Here's an issue, though. The Poison type isn't exactly a Fairy Resist, because I decided to get extra cheap Pokemon. I already got 13-point Iron Hands. Next up is 8-point Overquill. Overquill and Quillfish sharing the same pricing is absolutely criminal. But I'll take an even cheaper Spike Setter with 2 necessary typings for a draft. It gives me Intimidate support for my team, both versions of Spikes, and even cheese options like Scale Shot, Fail Stinger, or Destiny Bond. Did I say Fail Stinger? Who cares? Overquill is one of my favorite Pokemon, and I'm so glad I finally get to use it. I've been watching this thing do tons of work. It's a very good Pokemon, messed around with it a lot, very happy to have it. Wait, hold on. Overquill wasn't actually my next pick. Before I got Overquill, I got a mod that I was so uninterested in that I straight up forgot I drafted it, writing the script, and that was Enamorous. I got Enamorous after Iron Hands and then Overquill, because without Terrestrialization, this Pokemon is mid as hell, but it's a high tier fairy which is valuable and gives me a few cool things like Healing Wish. In a vacuum, Enamorous is great, but I'm unsure about it without Terrestrialization in this league, so yeah, we'll have to see. At this point, I noticed a lot of players were beginning to grab their ground types, causing me to get sniped of Sandaconda. Though a bit earlier than I'd have liked, I grabbed Piloswine this round. A lot of people were pretty confused by my choice of Piloswine as a ground, especially with Mamoswine available. The thing is, I specifically wanted my ground to be a bulky Stealth Rocker, and Piloswine gives me a lot more bulk than Mamoswine would. It packs Ice Shard for priority that I do value on my team at the moment that doesn't have to with priority, and isn't even weak to fire, and resists ice with Thick Fat, the latter being my first ice resist, which I desperately need. To combat the ice and fairy weaknesses, I needed a steel, desperately. At the moment, somehow we don't have a steel, and initially, my draft actually didn't have a steel, with my next Pokemon being Uxie, Lycanroc Dusk, another Pokemon, and Cinccino. However, I made transactions to get rid of those, as someone made a decision to ditch Jirachi. This Pokemon has an enormous move pool that I will be making full use of, chief of which being of course the 51% flinch Iron Head. Psychic Noise is also very important that I value on most of my drafts nowadays. Jirachi gives me another rocker, more pivot, very flexible stats, and overall it's going to be very fun to use, I can already see it. My next pick I was initially very reluctant to draft, but as it turns out, might actually be pretty cool in this league. This is my only hazard removal, and considering I have 2 item lock Pokemon, that's pretty big. This was also the only Pokemon of the ones that I mentioned earlier that didn't get transacted. And our Pokemon is Colossal. It was Uxie, Lycanroc, Colossal, Cinccino. A frequently mediocre Rapid Spinner. But I see the potential in it. The bulk of Colossal just bodes well with my team, with what I intend to use it for, and we may see Colossal more often than I anticipated. Which is crazy, it's a Colossal. This next Pokemon was mainly to just patch a hole in the team, being shitty Earthquake resists. I drafted Appleton. I was initially looking at Hydra or Chestnut, but Appleton was far cheaper and did basically the same thing for me. I'm not sure how often I bring it, but it's a pretty decent tank overall. I think I can definitely get a little bit of mileage out of Appleton, and I don't need to worry about that too much though. Appleton does what it needed to do on this draft, and that's fine. My final Pokemon was initially Vaporeon, but last minute I changed it to Milotic, who was a bit more expensive, but I had 2 spare points. I chose Milotic over Vaporeon for a few things. Vaporeon lured me in with access to Calm Mind, but Milotic's advantages felt superior. Instant healing and recover, higher natural physical defense, Dragon Tail, and crucially, Marvel Scale, which I may make use of this league. I drafted Milotic before, and I am very much excited to use it again in Generation 9. At the moment the Week 1 matchups have already come out, I am actually against a Rain team, so we'll see how that goes. That's my PWC team. It looks very exciting for me to use. Let me know how you feel about the draft. See you again or something. Penis, whatever.